Welcome to ThunderStash Gaming. Today we're taking a nostalgic trip back to 1986 to revisit the classic that started it all, Castlevania on the Nintendo Entertainment System. As we step into Simon Belmont's shoes once again, we'll explore if this legendary title still stands the test of time in 2024. So, grab your whips and let's dive into this hauntingly beautiful adventure. Castlevania on the NES places you in the boots of Simon Belmont, a legendary vampire hunter from the Belmont clan. Armed with the iconic vampire killer whip, Simon must battle his way through Dracula's castle, facing off against a variety of monsters and ghouls. The plot is simple yet effective. Defeat Dracula and bring peace to the land. While the storyline isn't complex, it's the atmosphere and the gothic horror theme that really stand out. Even without detailed, narrative cutscenes, the game's setting and boss encounters create a memorable and immersive experience. One of the defining features of Castlevania's gameplay is its deliberate and challenging control scheme. Simon Belmont's movement is deliberate, and once you commit to a jump, there's no turning back. That's right, unlike many other platformers of the era, Castlevania doesn't allow you to change direction in mid-air. This might feel restrictive at first, but it actually adds a layer of strategy to every jump, making you carefully consider each jump before you take it. In addition to his trusty whip, Simon has access to a variety of sub-weapons. These sub-weapons include the dagger, which it's a quick, straight projectile that can be thrown across the screen. You have the axe, which is perfect for attacking enemies above you as it arcs upward before crashing down. Then you got the classic holy water, and when thrown, it creates a damaging flame on the ground, ideal for dealing with enemies or even bosses that are vulnerable to fire. Then you have the boomerang, that's also known as the cross, but when I was doing research for this review, Konami referred to it as the boomerang. I've always just thought of it as the cross, but this weapon flies forward and then returns to Simon, dealing damage on both its outgoing and returning paths. So if you can master that sub-weapon, that's a huge help. Then you have the stopwatch, which is actually probably my favorite sub-weapon. The only downside is it costs a lot of hearts to use the stopwatch, but essentially it freezes most enemies in place for a few seconds, giving you precious time to plan your next move. But it doesn't work on some of the boss fights, and you won't know which boss fight it works on or doesn't work on until you're in that scenario. And then when you go to use the stopwatch, you find out that it doesn't work, and by the time you find out that it doesn't work, you've already been killed. So that's kind of a downfall to the weapon. The sub-weapons are powered by hearts collected throughout the levels, and it kind of provides a layer of depth and strategy to the gameplay. Like knowing when to use them and which one to carry can really mean the difference between victory and defeat, especially in the tougher sections of the game. For example, if you have a boss fight coming up with a boss that likes to fly around the screen, the axe might be a better weapon, or the boomerang versus the holy water. So there is strategy to it, no doubt. And I would say the controls might feel stiff to modern players, but they're part of what gives Castlevania its unique challenge. Like mastering Simon's movements and making the most of his arsenal is key to surviving Dracula's castle. When Castlevania was released in 1986, its graphics were nothing short of impressive for the NES, especially in how they contributed to the game's eerie atmosphere. Like the game's gothic horror art style filled with kind of dark, foreboding castles, the creepy graveyards, the monstrous enemies, they really stood out at the time. And as kids, Castlevania was genuinely a little scary. Walking through the dark hallways of Dracula's castle, never knowing what might leap out at you. It was kind of a thrilling experience back in the 80s, early 90s. The design of the bosses, like Medusa and Dracula, of course, himself, were in particular very memorable, with a sense of dread that kind of still resonates today, even as I went back through the game. And what's more impressive is how well the game performs. Unlike some other NES titles that suffered from noticeable slowdown when too many sprites were on the screen, Castlevania keeps up the pace pretty well. There is a little bit of slowdown, but it's not like some of the other NES games that had slowdown that really made the gameplay suffer. The game's smooth performance and jump feel responsive, which is crucial given the game's difficulty. The visuals combined with the atmospheric music create an immersive experience that defined the gothic horror genre for years to come. Now, if there's one thing Castlevania is universally praised for, it's the soundtrack. From the very first note of Vampire Killer, you know you're in for something special. Every track in the game perfectly complements the dark, kind of gothic atmosphere, driving home the tension and excitement as you battle through Dracula's castle. What's truly remarkable is that there isn't a single bad song in the entire game. Like, every piece of music is memorable, catchy, fitting. Castlevania, to me, is a shining example of why Konami became legendary for its soundtracks during the NES era. Whether it's the Castlevania series, Contra, or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, Konami had a knack for creating iconic music that still holds up today. In fact, the Castlevania soundtrack sounds just as great today as it did back then, if not better. The compositions have aged like fine wine, proving that great video game music is truly timeless. Even now, the melodies of Castlevania are still hauntingly beautiful, adding to the game's legacy as, in my opinion, one of the best soundtracks in the history of gaming. So, who is this game for? I think Castlevania appeals to a wide range of players. If you're a fan of classic platformers, action-adventure games, or simply enjoy retro gaming, this title is a must-play. It's also perfect for those looking to explore the origins of one of gaming's most beloved franchises. Even if you're new to the series, Castlevania provides an accessible entry point that captures the essence of retro gaming. Now, when it comes to the game's content, I'd say one of the standout features of Castlevania is its Titan focus. The game is divided into 6 levels, but each of these levels is further split into 3 stages, giving us a total of 18 stages to conquer. This structure adds a lot of variety to the gameplay, as each stage introduces new enemies, traps, and challenges. And despite being a linear game, Castlevania keeps you engaged by constantly throwing new and creative obstacles your way. There are no side quests or hidden objectives in the first Castlevania. It's all about progressing through the castle and taking down Dracula's monstrous minions one by one. This straightforward approach keeps the game laser focused on its core experience, and even though it's a short game by modern standards, it feels dense and satisfying. There's just enough content to keep you on your toes without overstaying its welcome, and every stage feels like a significant achievement when you finally conquer it. The lack of padding or unnecessary filler makes Castlevania a game that respects your time, which is a big part of why it still holds up so well today. Now, when it comes to the difficulty, Castlevania is known for its challenge. The game requires skill and precision with enemies that can quickly drain your health if you're not careful. However, the grind is balanced with ample checkpoints, allowing you to jump back into the action without too much frustration. The pacing, I think, is well structured, with each level offering a mix of exploration, combat, and platforming that keeps players engaged throughout the entire experience. There's tons of secrets in the game. This is the game where you can find, a pot roast or a chicken in the wall. Now, when it comes to the game's emotion and charm, playing Castlevania is kind of like stepping back in time to an era where games were about pure, unfiltered challenge and atmosphere. There's a certain magic in the way the game captures the gothic horror aesthetic with its pixel art, eerie sound design, and tough-as-nails gameplay. Even today, when I picked up the controller and hear that iconic Vampire Killer theme, I'm transported back to those late nights as a kid, huddled in front of the TV, determined to push through the castle's many terrors. And there's a sense of dread that creeps in as you move deeper into the castle, and the music fits it too perfectly, knowing that there's going to be tougher enemies and bosses that are awaiting you. But there's also a rush of excitement when you finally land the last hit on a boss, or make it through a stage with just like a small slither of health left. What makes Castlevania truly special is that it doesn't just offer a nostalgic trip down memory lane, it's a game that still evokes those same feelings of tension and triumph today. The game has a certain charm that comes from its simple yet effective design, and it manages to create an atmosphere that's both spooky and exhilarating. It's a reminder of why so many of us fell in love with gaming in the first place. Now, in terms of replay value, I think Castlevania remains engaging long after your first playthrough. Whether you're trying to beat your previous score, or you're trying to speed run through levels, or you're just experimenting with different strategies, there's always a reason to come back, and the simplicity of the game design and its iconic status kind of contribute to its lasting appeal. I mean, guys, this is a game I've been playing since I was a kid. I'm almost 40 years old, so I've been playing this game for, 35 years, right? And I still come back to it. And I wanted to revisit Castlevania as we kind of get into the fall season, Halloween's approaching. It's a perfect time to revisit a game like Castlevania. And I still own my original copy from when I was a kid. I would say that for a lot of people, though, the replay value is going to come into play because a lot of people haven't beat this game. It's really hard, so you're going to continue to replay it throughout the course of life to try and finally beat it. Now, I gotta say, when it comes to the fun factor, Castlevania delivers in spades. The combination of challenging gameplay, atmospheric graphics, and memorable music creates an experience that is truly hard to put down. So whether you're visiting it for nostalgia or experiencing it for the first time, there's no denying the joy that comes from slaying monsters and conquering Dracula's castle. Now, if you're wondering how long it takes to beat the game, you can expect to spend anywhere around 6 to 8 hours, depending on your skill level. Like if this is your first time playing it, because you're probably gonna die a lot. And I think it makes it a perfect choice for a weekend gaming session or a nostalgic trip down memory lane. Now, there are people that can beat this game in probably 30 minutes, but I'm saying if it's your first time playing it, you're probably going to die a lot. And you're going to need to practice and memorize all the enemy attacks and movements. Now, let's touch on Castlevania's Legacy a little bit, okay? Castlevania, to me, is more than just a NES classic. It's the foundation of one of the most beloved franchises in gaming history. When it was released in 1986, it set a new standard for action platformers with its tight controls, atmospheric world, and iconic music. The game's success paved the way for numerous sequels and spin-offs, many of which are regarded as some of the best games of all time. The Metroidvania genre, which blends exploration with action platforming, owes at least half of its DNA to Castlevania. Beyond the franchise, Castlevania has had a lasting impact on gaming as a whole. The gothic horror setting, the emphasis on boss battles, and the challenge-based progression system have influenced countless titles across multiple generations. Even today, you can see the echoes of Castlevania in modern indie games and big budget titles alike. Revisiting the original in 2024, it's clear that Castlevania isn't just a product of its time, it's a timeless piece of gaming history that continues to inspire and captivate players of all ages. And I would say that's even proof with the Netflix TV show that was extremely successful. Castlevania really is for everybody, and I would implore anyone who enjoyed the TV series to play all the games. Alright guys, now for my final thoughts. So, does Castlevania stand the test of time? I would say absolutely. It's a game that not only defined a genre, but also continues to be a rewarding experience nearly 4 decades later. The challenge is steep, the atmosphere is thick with tension, and the gameplay is as satisfying as ever. So whether you're revisiting the game purely for nostalgia like I just did, or discovering it for the first time, I think Castlevania is a must-play for anyone who appreciates classic gaming. It's a shining example of how great design and strong vision can create something truly enduring. As I finished my journey through Dracula's castle once again, I'm reminded why Castlevania has earned its place in the pantheon of gaming legends. It's a game that respects its players, challenges them, and rewards their perseverance in a way that's rarely seen in today's gaming landscape. If you haven't played it in a while, or if you've never experienced it before, do yourself a favor and dive back into this timeless classic. Castlevania isn't just a game, it's a piece of gaming history that still has the power to thrill and captivate us all these years later. Alright guys, that wraps up our deep dive into Castlevania. If you enjoyed this review and want to see more classic game content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to ThunderStash Gaming. Your support really helps the channel grow and lets me know you're enjoying the content. So drop a comment below. Let's talk about your favorite Castlevania memories or any thoughts you have on this legendary series. And if you're feeling generous, share this video with fellow retro gaming fans. Thanks for watching, and remember, never too old to play video games.